Welcome to today's deep dive,
Aye.
where we're going to be exploring a perspective on caregiving that you might not have heard before.
Right.
So we're looking at a blog post from Shaman John Rasmussen,
Okay.
who've been working in this field for 30 years.
Wow, 30 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of really interesting insights about this whole idea of how caregivers can avoid burnout.
Oh, that's a great topic.
Yeah, and how they can actually find joy in caregiving.
Yeah, because that's a hard one, right?
It is.
It is.
You know, it's tough.
Yeah.
And the one thing that I thought was really interesting about his blog post is he talks about how apathy can actually be a good thing.
Okay. That's an interesting take.
It is interesting, right?
Yeah. Looking forward to unpacking that.
Yeah, let's unpack it.
Okay.
So I guess the first thing that really stood out to me
Okay.
was how Rasmussen kind of tackles those long-held beliefs about caregiving, right? This idea that it automatically equals self-sacrifice and suffering.
Yeah, you have to give up everything.
Right.
And be miserable.
Yeah.
That's what makes you a good caregiver.
Right, exactly. And it's like he's really pushing for a way to break free from that.
It makes sense,
Yeah.
especially if you're going to be doing this for 30 years or even longer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to discover this like genuine happiness in the process of caring for others.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, it's almost counterintuitive at first,
Yeah.
right?
You think you have to suffer.
Yeah, you think you have to, completely give up everything about yourself. But his approach, coming from this shamanic perspective,
Okay.
offers some interesting tools and a whole new way of thinking.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
Well, we're going to get to that, but one of the first things that he talks about that I found fascinating
Right.
was these common archetypes that he sees caregivers kind of fall into.
Okay. I'm listening. What are they?
He talked about the caretaker and the hero.
I see. Yeah, I can see how those would come up a lot in caregiving.
Yeah, and he talks about how those can actually become traps.
Okay, let's unpack that. What does he mean by traps?
Well, he's observed in his work with clients
Okay.
that these archetypes often lead to an unsustainable cycle of self-sacrifice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes...
And take the caretaker archetype, for example.
Okay.
It's all about putting everyone else's needs first to the point of completely neglecting your own well-being.
Which can only last so long, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Right. Exactly.
And the hero archetype is similar, right?
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
It's this drive to swoop in and fix everything,
Right.
even if it means sacrificing your own health and happiness.
And it must be so hard to resist that urge, right?
Absolutely.
When you see someone you love in pain,
Exactly.
to not want to just swoop in and fix it all.
Yeah, you want to be the hero,
Yeah. But it comes at a cost.
It does. Yeah, so it's like by falling into these patterns, we're actually perpetuating this myth of self-sacrifice that he talks about.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
It really is.
And he argues that this can be detrimental not only to the caregiver, but also to the person they're caring for.
Okay, so explain that to me.
Well, because it creates this dependence where the person receiving care might not be empowered
Oh, I see.
to tap into their own resources and their own healing capabilities.
So they never learn to help themselves.
Right, exactly.
Really?
And that
Makes sense.
And he actually shares a really powerful anecdote in his blog
Okay.
about a client who completely exhausted herself
Oh.
taking care of her sick mother
Oh, no.
to the point where her own health deteriorated
Oh, wow.
and she could barely function.
So it's almost like the caregiving became counterproductive.
Yeah, and it's like it backfired on her, right?
Right, because she wasn't able to help anymore.
Exactly. And I think that's why Rasmussen believes that it's so crucial
Yeah.
for caregivers to prioritize their own well-being.
That makes sense. It's not selfish.
It's essential
Right,
to
exactly.
being able to do the job.
It's essential for providing sustainable and effective care.
Right.
And that's kind of where his ideas about empathy, apathy, and compassion come in.
Okay, so he's redefining these terms.
He's redefining them in a
Okay.
way that challenges our conventional understanding.
Okay, so how...
Well, he starts by addressing how our society tends to glorify empathy
right.
as this ultimate virtue in caregiving.
Like, you're not a good person
Right.
if you're not super empathetic.
Right. And he points out that prolonged unchecked empathy can actually lead to burnout, illness, and even resentment.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're constantly taking on the burden of other people's emotions.
Yes, exactly. It's like we're absorbing the emotional weight of everyone we're caring for.
Yeah.
And it can be so incredibly draining.
Absolutely.
So how does he suggest we navigate this?
Okay, I'm curious.
Well, he offers this really interesting shamanic technique
Okay.
for what he calls disengaging the cord. Disengaging the cord.
After interacting with someone in need,
Okay.
it's a way of consciously disconnecting
From what?
from that energetic link that you establish.
Oh, so there's an energetic component to this.
Yeah, and this is where things get a little bit woo-woo.
Okay, I'm open to it.
Okay, so in shamanic traditions,
Okay.
it's believed that when we interact with others, especially in a caregiving role,
Mm-hmm.
we can sometimes form these energetic connections.
Interesting.
It's almost like invisible threads.
Like an umbilical cord almost.
Yeah, exactly. And they link our energy fields.
Huh.
And these cords can actually become pathways for absorbing the other person's emotions and energy,
Wow.
which can be draining,
Especially for the caregiver.
especially if they're not aware of it.
So is this technique like cutting the cord?
Well, it's not about completely severing it,
Okay.
but it's about creating that healthy boundary.
Gotcha.
Acknowledging the connection,
Okay.
but consciously stepping back from it.
So you don't get totally overwhelmed.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not constantly absorbing the other person's energy.
I like that.
Yeah, and he actually describes this simple technique.
Oh, so you can actually do something.
You can do something.
Okay, tell me.
You run your hand down the center of your body,
Oh.
from your chest down to your stomach,
Okay.
almost like you're sweeping something away.
Like you're pushing something off of you.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's just a symbolic way of creating that energetic separation.
Interesting. I'm definitely going to try that one.
Yeah, I'm going to try it too.
Yeah.
I think it's something that could be really beneficial for anyone,
Yeah, not just caregivers.
not just caregivers.
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the times you interact with someone who's going through a tough time.
Right. Friends, family,
Colleagues, yeah.
colleagues. Yeah, anyone.
This could be a helpful way to stay grounded and avoid getting pulled into their emotional whirlwind.
Right. You don't want to get sucked in.
You don't want to get sucked in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, picking up on this idea of energetic connections.
Yeah.
One thing that really stood out to me was Rasmussen's emphasis on recognizing
Okay.
and facilitating a patient's own self-healing capabilities.
Oh, that's interesting.
And their connection to healing forces.
Okay, yeah. I see how that ties in with what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Empowering others to kind of tap into their own inner resources rather than
Bummer.
becoming overly reliant on the caregiver.
It's a really powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's moving away from that traditional model
Okay.
where the caregiver is solely responsible for fixing the patient's problems.
Right, like we're not the superheroes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We're not there to swoop in and fix everything.
And that actually brings us back to that shamanic technique
Yes.
for disengaging the cord that we were talking about.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned a hand gesture.
I did.
I have to admit, I'm still a bit curious about how that works in practice.
Well, it's surprisingly simple, really.
Okay.
Rasmussen describes it as just running your hand
Okay.
down the center of your body, almost like you're gently sweeping something away
Okay.
from your chest down to
Okay.
your stomach.
Okay.
And he explains that it's a symbolic way of disconnecting
Okay.
from that energetic link you've established with the person you're caring for.
So it's not about literally cutting off empathy entirely.
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's more about creating a healthy boundary.
I see.
It's recognizing that you can be fully present and supportive
Okay.
without absorbing their emotional state as your own.
I can see how this could be beneficial in so many situations.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just with patients, but like
Right.
think about dealing with a stressed out colleague
Yes.
or a friend going through a tough time.
Definitely.
This technique could help us stay grounded
Yes.
and avoid getting swept up in their emotional whirlwind.
You don't want to get sucked in
Oh.
into that vortex of negativity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I love how practical and accessible this technique is.
Oh, it's so easy.
Yeah.
You can do it discreetly anywhere, anytime. It's a subtle yet powerful tool
Yeah.
for managing your own energy
Okay.
and maintaining a sense of balance.
Okay, so let's talk more about that word apathy,
Okay.
because Rasmussen really challenges us to reconsider its meaning in the context of caregiving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a word that makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is
It
it
has
me?
some negative connotations.
It does.
Yeah.
But Rasmussen argues that true service
Okay.
can actually come from a place of detachment from the patient's pain.
Okay, so he's not saying we should be indifferent
No,
to their suffering.
not at all.
Okay.
It's recognizing that our own emotional response
Right.
isn't always necessary or helpful.
It's not about us.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of that Buddhist concept of non-attachment.
Yeah.
not being attached to the outcome,
Right.
but simply focusing on offering support in the best way we can.
Exactly.
And Rasmussen points out that this approach can actually lead to a more selfless form of caregiving.
Okay, that's interesting. Explain that.
Well, because if we're constantly trying to alleviate our own discomfort
Right.
by fixing the other person's problems,
I see.
it can become more about us than about them.
That's a good point.
And he uses that phrase,
Where is it?
healing yourself through your clients.
Mm.
And it really struck me as a subtle but important distinction.
Yeah, I can see that.
It highlights the potential pitfall of projecting our own unresolved issues onto those we're trying to help.
You're trying to fix yourself.
Yes.
Through other people.
Exactly, and how they can create a dynamic
Right.
that's ultimately detrimental to both parties.
Yeah, for sure.
And instead, Rasmussen advocates for doing our own healing work
Okay.
before engaging with clients or really anyone we're trying to help.
You got to take care of yourself first
Yeah.
before you can truly help others.
Exactly, and that's where his definition of compassion,
Okay.
as with the passion of another, really comes into play.
Okay. Remind me what that means.
So it's about finding that common ground,
Okay.
that shared passion
Uh-huh.
that allows us to connect in a positive and energizing way.
It's not about focusing on their problems,
That-
but on their passions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we're fueled by that shared passion,
Yeah.
it creates a much more sustainable and joyful experience
For everyone.
for everyone involved.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and it's not about denying empathy altogether.
Right.
It's finding that sweet spot where we can be present and supportive
Mm.
without getting lost in the other person's emotional landscape.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Yes, it is a balancing act.
Yeah.
And recognizing that true caregiving often involves empowering others
Right.
to tap into their own inner resources and healing capabilities.
Give them the tools.
Yes, give them the
To
tool.
help themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This has been such a mind-expanding conversation.
They really have.
What has been resonating with you the most so far?
I think for me, it's the emphasis on recognizing the interconnectedness of our well-being.
Okay.
You know how our own emotional state can
Mhm.
impact those we're caring for and vice versa.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
It's so crucial to prioritize our own self-care
Right.
so we can show up as our best selves for others.
It's not selfish.
It's not selfish.
It's essential.
It's essential.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of approaching caregiving from a place of shared passion.
Me too.
It's such a powerful concept.
It is.
It's shifting the focus from problem solving to co-creating
Mm-hmm.
a more positive and fulfilling experience. It
Absolutely.
makes me think about all the different ways we caregive in our lives,
Oh, yeah.
not just in traditional healthcare settings.
Right. Like friends, family.
Our colleagues, yeah.
Colleagues. Yeah. Anyone.
Whether we're supporting friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers,
Exactly.
these principles can apply,
They can.
And it's about bringing more awareness and intentionality
Right.
to all our interactions.
Being mindful of how
Yeah.
we're showing up.
Exactly. And recognizing the potential impact we have on each other.
That's powerful.
It is.
Yeah.
And remembering that true compassion doesn't require us to suffer
Right.
alongside those we're helping.
You don't have to take on their pain as
Yeah.
your own.
And in fact, it might be more compassionate
Yeah.
to maintain a healthy detachment,
Mm-hmm.
allowing them the space to discover their own strength and resilience.
It's about empowering them
Yes, it
to
is.
heal themselves.
Rasmussen offers some really profound insights
He does.
that can transform the way we approach caregiving.
Yeah, it's a whole new paradigm.
It is.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between empathy and detachment,
Right.
cultivating our own well-being,
Mm-hmm.
and embracing the power of shared passion.
Beautiful.
And he reminds us that joy and caregiving aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah, they can coexist.
They can, and they should go hand in hand.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is such a rich and nuanced topic.
it is.
And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have to wrap up our deep dive today.
Go ahead.
Let's explore how Rasmussen's insights can be applied to specific situations
Right.
and challenges in our own lives.
Yeah.
We can delve into practical strategies for
Yeah.
cultivating that sense of detachment and compassionate connection
Okay.
that he advocates for.
As we wrap up our deep dive into Shaman John Rasmussen's work, I'm curious,
Yeah.
how do we actually put these ideas into practice in everyday life?
Well, Rasmussen really emphasizes that it all starts with awareness.
Okay.
He really encourages us to pay attention to our own internal state.
Okay.
when we're interacting with someone who might need care or support?
Okay.
Are we getting caught up in their emotional whirlwind?
Oh, so
Are we feeling drained
gotcha.
or resentful?
So like those are signs
Those are all signs
that we're over-identifying.
that we might be over-identifying with their pain.
So first step is just noticing
Just notice
how we're feeling.
how we're feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what?
From there, we can start to practice some of those techniques
Okay.
that Rasmussen suggests
Okay.
for creating a healthy detachment.
Okay.
Remember that hand gesture he talks about?
Yeah, I've been trying it out.
Have you?
Yeah,
It's surprisingly grounding.
it is. Yeah.
It's like this little reminder to
Yeah.
step back and create some space
Yeah.
between our own energy field and the other person's.
So let's say we've done that.
Mm-hmm.
We've become aware of how we're feeling, and we've started practicing some detachment techniques.
Yeah.
What's the next step in moving towards a more compassionate approach?
Well, Rasmussen really emphasizes the importance
Okay.
of finding that shared passion.
Oh, yeah.
He says that true compassion comes from connecting with the other person's passions,
Right.
not just their pain.
Right.
So it's like shifting the focus
All right.
from problem solving to possibility
Instead of just fixing.
instead of just fixing.
We're looking for that connection.
Yes,
That sparks joy.
exactly.
Okay.
He actually gives this great example in his blog
Okay.
about working with a client who was struggling with a chronic illness.
Okay.
And instead of focusing solely on the illness and the client's suffering,
Yeah.
Rasmussen asked her about her passions,
Oh, I like that.
her dreams, the things that brought her joy.
Okay.
And through that conversation,
Yeah.
they discovered a shared love of gardening.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah.
So they connected
They connect
on a level beyond the illness.
on a deeper level
Yeah.
that went beyond just the illness.
And then what happened?
Well, from that place of shared passion,
Okay.
they were able to co-create a healing journey
Oh,
that was much more empowering and fulfilling
wow.
for both of them.
That's powerful.
The client started tending a small garden,
Okay.
which brought her immense joy and a sense of purpose.
I love that.
And Rasmussen was able to support her in a way that felt energizing rather than draining.
So it's really about shifting that focus.
It's about shifting that focus.
From fixing to connecting.
Yes.
And I think it also kind of speaks to the fact that caregiving
Yeah.
is not a one-size-fits-all approach.
No, definitely not.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right. It's about finding those unique points of connection
Okay.
that can foster that sense of shared purpose and joy.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the one key takeaway
Okay.
that you would want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember
Okay.
is that true compassion starts with taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
It's not selfish
That's not fish.
to prioritize our own well-being.
No, it's essential.
It's essential
Yeah.
if we want to show up
Yeah.
fully and authentically for others.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And by cultivating that healthy sense of detachment
Mm-hmm.
and focusing on those shared passions, we can create a more sustainable and joyful approach to caregiving,
Absolutely.
both for ourselves and for those we're caring for.
And remember,
Yeah.
these principles can apply to all kinds of relationships.
Yeah. Not just caregiving.
Not just traditional caregiving roles.
Right.
Whether you're supporting a friend,
Yeah.
a family member, a colleague, or even a stranger.
Yeah.
These insights can help you navigate
Yeah.
those interactions with more awareness, compassion, and joy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We hope you found these unconventional insights to be helpful
Yeah,
and thought-provoking.
definitely.
Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.